blackface cake surfaced at Cleveland High School in Southeast Portland.
People were sharing on their Snapchat stories that they saw this and they're like, oh, this looks like Jim Crow, this looks like racist.
I can't help but wonder what we do now, that in 30 years from now we're going to look back and say, my God, what were we thinking?
There are really terrible issues that go on in the school, and it doesn't get dealt with in a serious matter.
Thursday, the school's principal sent a letter to parents saying that there's no place for hate speech, bias, or discrimination at Cleveland. We want and expect our schools to be places where all students feel safe, welcome, included, and respected by staff and classmates. Any act of racism, racial insensitivity, or discrimination of any sort is completely unacceptable at our schools.
Now, Cleveland High sent another letter home to parents here today outlining what they're doing moving forward. That includes a panel discussion on Wednesday with students of color. It includes an anti-hate assembly here on Thursday. And this week, social studies teachers will be delivering lessons about racism and the history of blackface.
That is a hate crime.
Queen's University Principal Daniel Wolf reacting to several acts of vandalism found on campus Friday morning. Some of the messages are difficult to understand, but appear to be anti-Semitic and targeting minority groups.
Whoever it was that did this, I would say to them, you may have done some research in order to come up with those elusive slogans, but you are a despicable coward.
Campus security is now working with Kingston Police and are reviewing security camera footage from the buildings around us. If a perpetrator is arrested, they could be charged with a hate crime.
So in the issues that you just brought up, climate change is one of the main drivers of our public health. So the difference between, say, 1.5 degrees of warming, which is the least that folks think that we can get, to 2, you're talking about 150 million deaths. That's 25 Holocausts, right? So how is that not a health issue? How is that not about health care, right? You're talking about immigration. Climate change is going to bring hundreds of millions of climate migrants, of climate refugees, both from outside the U.S. and inside the U.S. as you see people move. So
resist, this year's theme for the Dyke March.
We want to stand for our rights. We want our rights, and we want people to acknowledge that.
The word we claim to represent a grassroots movement that isn't to be mistaken for a parade, but a rally that brings together queer women, trans people, and allies that reflect experiences, accomplishments, and the fight for equality. The rally was for members of the trans and non-binary communities and allies. For Pride Toronto, these individual marches during Pride Month give a space and voice to specific communities to express their experiences. For many taking part in today's Dyke March, the hope is the rally continues to spark awareness and lift the voices that sometimes don't feel heard.
And we're asking this question, could there be a pill that blocks racism?
And that video was made off campus during spring break. The district got involved after it was shared on social media, upsetting many students. Some of those students came here to the Board of Education meeting tonight asking the district to do more.
Far too many individual students, as well as groups of students in Parkway schools, have become targets of harassment and discrimination.
A group of concerned citizens formed the group Students for Progressive Change, calling specifically for changes ranging from the implementation of social justice and racial sensitivity training for faculty, staff, and students to changes in the district's curriculum.
We are not just slaves, and we are not just a group of thugs trying to fight for equality. We are not just a group of people who play a part in your history. We have our own great history.
The Board of Education president read a statement condemning the racist video and promising to review district policies and continue efforts to teach more about culture, history, and traditions to build greater sensitivity to all people.
We hope that with students speaking out this time and after the protests that we can make some serious changes to prevent what's happening from ever happening again.
A disturbing viral video shows a mob of teens in Make America Great Again hats harassing a Native American elder in Washington.
A heartbreaking display of blatant hate, disrespect, and intolerance. And she put some of the blame on President Donald Trump. Now the incident comes just days after the president mocked one of the worst Native American massacres in U.S. history in a tweet directed to Senator Elizabeth Warren.
The reason that I'm so inflamed about fat phobia, the reason that I have this
this new understanding of a more deeper understanding of oppression is because I've survived fat phobia from such a young age. When we find ourselves moving towards using euphemisms like Eurocentric or Caucasian or even white, when we mean to say white supremacist, we are coddling white fragility. And almost like we're allowing the environment of the infection of white supremacy to maintain that environment.
Did you say Instagram models?
Yeah. Yeah, they actually make a lot of
money.
money. They make $1 million.
Yeah. You guys did such a good job today that I would like to pay you for your services. So here is $1 for the boys. And here is 87 cents. Do you know why?
Why? Why?
Because in this country, women earn 87 cents for every dollar that men earn.
Ow!
Is that fair?
No.
Why not?
They get more money than us. It's just rude. It's almost like accusing someone for how they look or what they are.
Right. It's called the gender pay gap, and your generation has to work hard to fight against it. Sound like a plan?
Yes. Yes. Okie dokie.
If Mark Zuckerberg was Mary Zuckerberg, or if Sergey and Bryn were, Sujata and Brianna, would you be seeing some of these issues that you're seeing? Would you be seeing our privacy being spread to everybody? Would you be seeing, sexual harassment payouts in the billions of dollars? I don't know. I think the world would look like a very different place. And I am certainly working every single day to create that world. Oh my God, when I go to college campuses and I walk into their computer science departments, I see my girls everywhere. My girls are everywhere. I have young women I had a group of girls build, a game about Harriet Tubman to teach people about slavery.
Gonzalez is working with the Southern Poverty Law Center and several other organizations to change this. They've created Change the Terms, a set of corporate policies to help internet companies stop hate online. She says one way that deplatforming can be improved is by providing the public with an open book about what companies take down and why.
People of color protesting racism are often taken down, while white supremacists engaging in racism are not. And we need some transparency so that we can hold these corporations accountable. We need data so that it's not just left to the companies or a few public watchdogs to decide.
Next up could be to take deplatforming a step further, to the registrars, network providers, and payment processors that help keep websites running.
Critics say that Facebook was slow, as it has been with other types of disinformation and abuse that have proliferated on the platform, to address what should have been obvious all along, which is that white nationalism is effectively the same as white supremacy, that it's already banned.
But vowed to, quote, get better and faster at finding and removing hate from our platforms. And it said while people will still be able to demonstrate pride in their ethnic heritage, Facebook says it will not tolerate praise, support, or representation of white nationalism and separatism. Facebook said it would also start connecting people who search for terms associated with white supremacy to an organization called Life After Hate, focused on helping people leave hate groups.
Administrators at RSU 21 sent this letter to parents letting them know about recent reports of hate speech and racial discrimination on social media and the school bus. According to the letter, the district has swiftly and thoroughly responded to issues brought forward, and staff are engaged in training on best practices for prevention and response to handle these situations. Jennifer Archer says her son, who is Black, has dealt with these incidents before.
We've had a lot of encounters with racism. Not all that have been handled well, or any for that matter.
We reached out to the superintendent of RSU 21, who did not want to speak about this on camera.
Well, there were no direct threats, but some of those messages were clearly anti-Semitic, they were anti-Muslim, and one of them allegedly even said something about encouraging kids to join the militia. So out of an abundance of caution, just to be safe, there were extra police officers on hand here today.
I think everybody needs to be aware that hate is out there, but also hate crimes are out there, and it doesn't stop at a certain age group.
As Tracy Wright waited for her son after school, she told us she's anxious to talk to him about the hate-filled posts from a now deleted Instagram account.
I'm sure we'll have a discussion about it.
Some of the posts in question contained swastikas. One used a Dr. Seuss character to deliver an anti-Semitic message.
Not surprising this year in K through 12. I mean, what we've seen around anti-Semitism, racism, bullying, bias, it's just been a really tough school year.
The ADL is now working with Point Loma High to try to stop the hate.
For us in this instance, it's all about education. And how do we create a climate on that school campus or on any school campus where every student feels safe and comfortable going to school?
The principal sent a message to parents saying an investigation found there is no substantiated threat. Going forward, the school will strengthen its tolerance education programs. Tracy Wright applauds that effort, but knows it's an uphill battle.
Social media is a hard thing to control, and the more people are aware of the situation, I think the better, and the more is said about it, the better.
Now, this is one of the teaching tools they'll be using on campus when kids return here in the fall. It's called the No Place for Hate Resource Guide. School lets out here in the next couple of days, by midweek next week, but until then you can expect to see those extra police officers on hand just in case.
Well, Nancy, the Laurier Group wants to see incidents of racism gone, but this report tries to unpack bigger problems like racial diversity among students, staff, and faculty. Now, the report notes there's racist stereotypes, whiteness, and a lack of accountability to prevent systemic racism. The author of the report says this isn't a WLU or UW problem. Rather, there is underlying racism at most post-secondary institutions.
What she discovered were these images splattered near a Little League baseball field in Sydney.
I get super emotional with it because I can't imagine that we've come so far to go back to all these racist comments, and it was extremely hard when my friend sent me the photo. I actually had to leave one of the events that I was at because I got so emotional in my car.
You wouldn't think that a shaving commercial would have such meaning to it.
I thought it was really good for the assaults and everything that's happening around the world and like the news, and I think it was good for Gillette to do that.
It was inspiring that a company that makes foaming and like products for your hair is like inspiring other men to like help other people in a way.
They're not saying men are horrible, but they're saying that like men need to improve.
Over the span of the program, we talk about things like gender stereotypes, body image, emotions, friendships, relationships, misogyny, feminism, like basically a big range of topics that are relevant to their experiences.
Then this heartbeat bill comes in.
I mean, it's like a slap in the face.
Really? Why?
Not just for women, but generally, because we want to work anywhere you want to work. You want to make sure that your rights are intact.
When Governor Brian Kemp signed the bill banning abortions after 6 weeks, Hollywood pushed back. Many major studios and networks said they may leave if the bill becomes law in January.
Even if this bill doesn't come into effect and if the courts block it, I think a lot of producers say Georgia is off the table. We're just not going to even consider it.
Action! Until then, the TV and film industry is a little like The Walking Dead, trying to survive as the battle between the bill and boycott shuffles forward.
Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg in Paris today for a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron. Macron was putting pressure on the social media platform to crack down on hate speech and the spread of misinformation.
SZA tweeted about the incident that she says happened in a Sephora store outside of Los Angeles. SZA wrote that an employee named Sandy called security to make sure the singer was not stealing from the store. In response, Sephora tweeted, quote, "You are a part of the Sephora family, and we are committed to ensuring every member of our community feels welcome and included at our stores." SZA reportedly used to work at Sephora, which is owned by the Paris-based luxury goods company LVMH. A spokesperson for the chain told Reuters that it was aware of the incident, but said Wednesday's training day was not, quote, a response to any one event, and that planning for the inclusivity workshops had been in the works for months.
Over the past decade, several historical statues across Canada have become a flashpoint for debate. Canada's quote-unquote founding fathers have become an insulting and hurtful symbol for Indigenous peoples.
YouTube is announcing plans to remove thousands of videos and channels that promote hate speech. The online platform says they will remove videos that advocate white supremacy and other bigoted ideologies. The move may result in thousands of videos and channels being removed from the site altogether. The company began enforcing its policy this week, but admits it could take months before all the content is removed. Online companies have come under intense criticism for their delayed reaction to the spread of hateful and false content.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And Heidi studies media, democracy, and digital economy.
I'm pleased that it's happened, but it's come really quite too late. And the big question that I have is really exactly what you pointed to at the beginning, which is how is this going to be enforced and how long is this going to take? And those are questions that I think need to be answered a little quicker than months and months.
Absolutely. We've seen already with Facebook, because a month or two back, they made a similar announcement saying that they were going to ban white supremacism from their platform. And we've seen some of the groups that they've kicked off been able to sort of evade these restrictions and get back on. So
there have been the long-term factors, just the fact that many democratic and other governments have become interested in regulating platforms. But the shorter-term factor was, I think, the Christchurch tragedy that happened, and a very recent call a few weeks ago that was signed by governments and platforms in Paris called the Christchurch Call, which asked for platforms and governments to do more to fight hate. So I think that was one of the proximate causes for why YouTube was releasing this announcement this week.
They said this, that channels that repeatedly brush up against our hate speech policies will be suspended from the YouTube Partner Program, meaning they can't run ads or their channel or use other monetization features like Snapchat.
And again, it's had mixed effectiveness because people who aren't able to monetize their videos or aren't able to have ads on their videos can still direct people to their websites where they're selling some of this merchandise. So it doesn't take away the problem entirely.
Does it then, Heidi, perhaps at the very least, set a good precedence? Because we know that there are these other platforms where the policing has not occurred in such a strict manner. It hasn't been introduced in a strict manner. So I'm wondering whether or not this will set a good example, or whether these other websites, or there's a whole bunch of other host sites where you can post videos, whether or not they will just continue with the status quo.
There are always limits to freedom of expression. Targeting people with hate speech based on their ethnicity or their sexual orientation. There are things like that I think we can start with before getting into these more complicated issues of what sort of speech should be banned outright.
Like groups representing marginalized people, journalists, etc., have enough support to actually be able to report on these things, and that platforms listen to them. Most of the times when we see platforms taking action, it's really because journalists and others have uncovered some of the times that they're not enforcing their own policies.
I thought maybe a good place to start is YouTube, and obviously it comes up a lot. What goes through your mind when you watch a video like the recent one? You had this teenager, what appeared to be donning Muslim garb, spewing a lot of anti-Muslim, anti-Semitic, homophobic hate. What goes through your mind when you see a video like that and see that it's gotten 350,000 views?
I don't know all the details of this specific video, but in general, look, I mean, all of us, none of us want harmful content on our platforms. I think last quarter alone, we removed 9 million videos from the platform. More recently, we have introduced, just like today we do this in search, we rank content based on quality. And so we're bringing that same notion and approach to YouTube so that we can rank higher quality stuff better and really prevent borderline content which doesn't exactly violate policies which need to be removed, but which can still cause harm. And so we are working hard. It's a hard computer science problem. It's also a hard societal problem because we need better frameworks around what is hate speech, what's not, and how do we as a company make those decisions at scale and get it right without making mistakes.
You've talked about the progress that's made, but I feel like every other week we're talking about something really bad, whether it was, with the Notre Dame fires and 9/11 footage showing up. It feels like there's still a lot of problems. I mean, what sort of grade would you give YouTube for where it's at right now?
Look, we aren't quite where we want to be, but I think it's a genuinely hard problem of how do YouTube has the scale of the entire internet. And I think we are making a lot of progress, but the thing we are trying to do is to bring more authoritative sources and fact checks on videos which may be controversial. It's a case where we got it wrong, but that's what we are trying to do, and we are working hard to improve.